We've gotten to the end of the witnesses, the jury instructions are being worked on, and closing arguments are set to begin tomorrow. This is day 30 of the Karen Reed trial. So you can be happy that this will be the last of my daily videos on this case if you are tired of it. I will create a verdict video when that comes out. Welcome to the Roundup, True Crime with Mike. Here I give you update to current cases so you can quickly catch up on cases and legal issues. Views and opinions expressed are my own, and this is not legal advice. We had 3 witnesses for the defense today. The first witness was Dr. Frank Sheridan. His career started in 1971 with him graduating from medical school. He had worked in forensic pathology and ended up at San Bernardino doing autopsies. He said over the course of his career he had done or overseen 13,000 autopsies. He retired in 2017, but said he consulted with San Bernardino after retirement too, and eventually he retired his stethoscope. He was put on the witness stand to ask if the marks on the arm of John O'Keefe were from dog bites, and in his opinion he thought yes they were. He was asked if they thought the marks on the arms were from a car accident, and he said no, and his reasoning was because there was no bruising. Let's listen to 2 clips.
Regarding whether those injuries are consistent with being struck, with an individual being struck by a vehicle.
If you mean struck in that part of the body, on the arm, like
Yes.
directly, I would say no, it doesn't look like that at all. Mm-hmm.
And can you explain that?
Well, if you're hit by a vehicle, or whichever part of your body is hit, if it's a significant impact at all, you're going to get bruising, and we don't have any bruising here. We just have what I would call linear abrasions without any bruising. So that does not look to me at all remotely like an impact from a motor vehicle.
What would you expect?
Well, when I say quite a few, it's not an enormously common event, but I've done probably at least a dozen or so involving deaths where an animal was involved one way or another.
Have you conducted any autopsies in which any individual was attacked by a dog?
Yes, I have a few.
Can you describe that for the jury?
Well, I'd have to just refresh my memory out of the blue here. But first of all, I had a number of cases, 3 or 4, I think, over the years involving children, was primarily children who were killed by feral dogs. And the dogs attacked the kid, and killed them. So I had that a few times.
On cross, Lally asked if Dr. Sheridan got the full reports. Did he also know that there was testing to see if there was dog DNA? Also, did he get a picture of Chloe's bites that happened a few months later? He said no to both questions. The problem with dogs and pathologists is that there aren't too many deaths related to people getting bitten by dogs, especially adults. Children can be killed by dogs, and the doctor talked about some feral dogs that got to a young child. So pathologists aren't going to see many cases where dog bites are the cause of death. Next up on the stand was Dr. Daniel Wolf. He is a director at ARCA, a firm that does traffic reconstruction. His firm was hired by a third party to look at the accident and try and figure out what happened. One of the first arguments is that you should see damage to the bumper in any pedestrian accident, and there wasn't any. The theory that he and his coworker came up with is that John broke the taillight with the glass from the bar. Here is a clip.
Well, when I say
automatic cannon that would fire the drinking glass.
Certainly. So we performed 2 different tests in terms of speeds. The target speeds were 30 and 40 miles per hour.
Why was that?
Well, so with consultation with Dr. Rentschler, he indicated that that is a reasonable speed at which an adult male or an individual, for that matter, could throw a drinking glass at the taillight.
Had anybody up to that point, told you any specific, let me see if I can rephrase that. Had anybody indicated that there was any evidence whatsoever that John O'Keefe had thrown a drinking glass at the taillight?
No.
So they went and created a pressurized air cannon to try and shoot the glass into the taillight. They wanted to show what potentially could happen if the glass was thrown at the taillight. On cross, Lally asked questions about whether or not he heard other details like John's DNA being on the taillight or that John's hair was actually on the back of the car. He actually asked if they went out and visited the car in person, and he said no. Next witness up was Dr. Andrew Schuler, a biomechanical engineer and accident reconstruction expert. also with ARCA. He was there to talk about crash injuries. So if you like more talk of physics, he was the guy who did. Let's play a clip where he talks about whether the head could be hit by the car.
Head as well as an arm, the right extremity, right arm?
I did, yes, sir.
Taking those one at a time, is the injury to the head that you saw consistent with having been struck by a vehicle at 24 miles per hour?
It is not, no, sir.
Can you explain why that is?
There's a couple of reasons. First of all, and the main reason is that to get the injury, it was a fracture at the occipital region of the head, which is basically on the back bottom part of the head. So in order to have that part of the head contacted by the tail light, you would somehow have to have a configuration or be standing in a manner that the rest of your body doesn't get hit, because there's no other significant injuries to the body. If there's enough force to cause a skull fracture, then there's going to be certainly enough force to cause injury to the rest of the body. So first of all, you have to determine how could you configure somebody could actually be standing to have only the head impacted, the back of the head. And even if that was the case, if somebody positioned themselves in such a manner to have that occur, you're still going to see other injuries related to that. For instance, with the cervical spine, over 1,000 pounds of force acting on the head, you're going to get significant cervical injuries, fractures, disc injuries, tendon and ligament injuries. So the fact that we only have that head injury and only damage to the occipital portion of the skull is inconsistent in this case with being struck by that tail light. And then there's also the evidence that we saw.
So he is saying that the head injury isn't consistent with being hit by a car at 24 miles per hour. On cross, Lally went over the details that he wasn't given. Once this witness was finished, the defense rested. Karen did not testify on her own behalf. After lunch, the two sides plus the judge went over jury instructions. They went over a Bowden instruction, which is saying that cops didn't follow all the correct procedures for that type of case. That was denied. And then they went over lesser included charges. They will be prepared and ready for tomorrow and closing arguments. The defense did save their strongest expert for last, since it gave a lot more physics to the accident. There had been rumors that Karen would testify, but in the end she did not. So after 30 days of court, we are ready to hear closing arguments. We heard many closing arguments the other day, and Lally was a little more passionate on that speech. We know that Yannetti and Jackson bring more power to their speeches. Then once that's done, it's all in the hands of the jury, and we wait. If you have enjoyed my daily trial summaries, put it in the comments and hit like and subscribe if you haven't. If you don't like them, please also comment on that. Thank you. Thank you for listening to an episode of The Roundup. Be safe out there, and remember, don't do anything bad that will end up on one of my episodes.